Good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. I'm Shivani Gupta. Some state governments have asked for Bharat Biotech and ICMR co-produce Covaxin formula and technology to be shared with other manufacturers so that production capacities can be boosted quickly. This demand has been made by the likes of Delhi, Andhra Pradesh and Maharashtra governments to the centre. The basic premise is that since the current two India manufacturers have limited production capacities that are seemingly inadequate at the moment, more companies can be roped in to produce more jabs. The government has responded saying that they have no issues in doing so, and when any manufacturer makes it clear to them that they have the capacity to produce the vaccine on their own, they will look into granting the tech transfer. And Bharat Biotech has already been asked to work with Madhya Biotech to look at their production capacities.
जैसा अरविंद केजरीवाल जी ने कल माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी ने कहा था कि इन दोनों कंपनियों की प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी लिमिटेड है, इनसे फार्मूला लेके सारी कंपनियों को, देश में जितनी भी कंपनियां वैक्सीन बना सकती हैं उनको सबको इसका फार्मूला देके मास स्केल पे प्रोडक्शन कराएं, नहीं तो ये थर्ड वेव, फोर्थ वेव, फिफ्थ वेव में हमारे लोग वैसे ही मरते रहेंगे जैसे इस सेकंड वेव में मरे हैं।
यह हुआ है कि 3-4 जो पीएसयूज हैं, उन पीएसयूज को भी भारत सरकार और आईसीएमआर ने खास करके उनको कहा है कि आप कोवैक्सीन का जो है निर्माण बढ़ाइए, प्रोडक्शन बढ़ाइए। जो आईसीएमआर है जिसके पास ये फॉर्मूला है, जो लाइसेंस है, ये आईसीएमआर कुछ फर्म्स के साथ बातचीत कर रही है कि आप चाहें तो आप हमसे ये फॉर्मूला लें, आप बनाएं।
Let's get you a quick check of where Bharat Biotech actually stands as we speak. It's already working on its production expansion by repurposing its Bengaluru facility, which earlier made animal vaccines. Such a process can take up to 4 to 6 months, and it's expected that this facility will be up and running by July. Meanwhile, they have been in talks with Panacea Biotech, and these talks were initiated by the Department of Biotechnology. Panacea is the only vaccine maker in India apart from Bharat Biotech with a biosafety level 3 production facility, which is crucial in making Covaxin because it involves the cultivation of large batches of the infectious SARS-CoV-2 before killing them. But as demands grow for more vaccines, important question is whether sharing a patent or formula in itself can provide a short-term solution, because the crunch is right now. Experts say that even if a technology can be shared, vaccines are a very complex formulation that not many are capable of producing currently. Production is also controlled by raw materials, which will have to be imported, and just adding more units doesn't automatically mean more vaccines. Since safety is of primary concern, the production amplification takes time and corners cannot be cut here. And preparing such a facility in itself can take a few months' time, even if the transfer is done today. So the big question that we're asking is whether sharing Covaxin formula can be an immediate solution. In other words, can it deal with the shortage right now during the peak of the second wave, because the crunch has also been experienced right now. Dr. Virender Singh Chauhan, Chairman, former Director of the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, where he currently holds the Arturo Falashi Chair; Keval Handa, former MD Pfizer India; Sudarshan Jain, Secretary General of Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance; and Natasha Loder, Health Policy Editor of The Economist and host of The Economist's new podcast, The Jab, all joining us on the show. Let me go across to Dr. Virender Singh Chauhan. The government, of course, is on the same page. It wants to ramp up production. So the next question would be, why is it taking time? Could you explain to us what are the logistical and time constraints in doing what, for example, some governments are asking now, that you share the formula and share the technology and let others produce Covaxin?
So I'll be brief, because if one gives a long answer, then there can be confusion in it. So the vaccine, first of all, is really not a formula. It's a it's a part of either the full virus or part of the virus, which you have to carefully, scientifically rationalize. All that has been worked out. Now, the most important thing in a vaccine production is because it's done at a large scale and it is given to healthy individuals. So the quality of vaccine that you make or the quality of product you make cannot be compromised. And quality assurance comes at a cost. And in this case, cost is of many kinds. You have to have 20, 25 other chemicals that have been brought, all having made under GMP conditions, batch-wise certified, and so on. So this is a long process. Also, vaccines, especially Covaxin, as I know, I can only tell what I know, also has an adjuvant. It's called Viromax. Now, Viromax has to be put it in a certain amount. Let's say all that has been worked out, which has been worked out by Bharat Biotech. You give it to another company. Company has to not ramp up, have to make sure that they can handle bulk material. Now, from the time of bulk formation, for example, in this case, if you have cell lines where you can make a virus, because live virus has to be produced in a cell line. After that, very carefully, you have to collect the virus, you have to purify, you have to inactivate it, so make sure that there's no active virus in this, and so on and so forth. I don't want to bore the audience with the details. And then it has to be mixed. After making it, you have to make sure in a different location that you made exactly what you got so-called formula from. So to cut the long story short, it's going to take at least about, if everything goes well, after the technology given, at least, to my understanding, 80 to 90 days, if then everything works right. So your raw materials that have to move into new locations, large amounts, no point making vaccine in smaller doses. Making 2, 3 lakhs, 4 lakhs of vaccine doesn't make any sense. You have to make it at a very large scale. Then only it is viable, profitable. For that, you can, then finally, I just want to say your supply chain of all other chemicals. You cannot not have one chemical missing, whether it is TAG, whether it is sugar, whether it is stabilizer. And then you need to test what you made is what you made. And that takes also time. So finally, I'll only say that since vaccines are given to healthy people and therefore have to be produced very carefully, time taking is a necessary commodity here. It's a necessary condition. So to answer your question very straightforwardly, it takes 2 to 3 months if everything else goes right.
And there can still be things that go wrong. So let me bring in...
supply chain, for example.
Supply
one
chains.
chemical not coming.
So Darshan Jain, I wanted to ask you, there are a list of 14 companies that do make vaccines for humans currently in India. There are some 4 PSU units. There are also 3 other units aligned with the government. So if we were to do this today, leave aside the fact that Bharat Biotech is in talks with Panacea, that the government is looking at the PSU units, and the other, some of the vaccine manufacturers in India are already working on their own formulas or have tie-ups with international vaccines. Can we look at the rest? Can many more people, many more companies produce the Covaxin as it stands in India? Or will they need to take some time before they can do so in the first place?
So thank you very much. And as Virendra was trying to explain very, very clearly, that making vaccine is a complex process. It requires multiple steps. It requires raw material, immunogenicity has to be tested, and every process has to be done very meticulously. It is not that tomorrow, if someone gives me the technology, I start producing it. The good point is there is a mapping which has been done by the government of various manufacturers of vaccine in India, and we are trying to explore all options. One option is being explored is enhancing the capacity of the current manufacturers, and it is there in the media that Serum Institute is going to ramp up the facilities from current 6.5 to 70 million to 100 million, which is a very important point. Second, Bharat Biotech itself is ramping up its facility.
Right.
We will see Sputnik coming in the market. We are seeing biological Evans and Johnson's coming into the market. And let's not forget, we are also seeing Zydus launching its own vaccine, which is DNA-based vaccine. And MCure is working on mRNA vaccine. So there is a lot of integrated efforts which is being undertaken. Good point is that within a year's time, we are seeing the development of vaccine. Yes, there are teething troubles at the moment. We have to understand, all of us, that vaccine is a complex process. It's not an easy process. And safety is very, very important. And all efforts are being undertaken at this moment to ramp up the production and make vaccine accessible.
Let me go across to Keval Handa also. You, of course, yourself have dealt with issues like this in the past. So my straight question is asking Bharat Biotech technology transfer for today, as some have done, is it a short-term solution? Can it help us right now? Or is it more a mid-term to long-term solution?
Well, good evening to all of you. I think the politicians should stop taking pot shots. There's not a slot machine that you put a coin and the coke comes out. I mean, it's something that they should try to understand.
Right.
As Sudarshan has rightly pointed out to you, we are building capacity. Just to give you a feel of what capacity we are building up. Covaxin, 70 million. Covaxin, 12. Reddy's, 70, the Sputnik vaccine. Zydus, 20 million. BioAdvance, 50 million. 222 million vaccines capacity by these companies only. What is the population of this country? I mean, we have already well secured and ready for it in another 3 to 6 months. And you want to add on new capacity or give the license to others, it's not an easy task. First, giving technology and actually playing out the technology are two different things. Now, hand-holding will be required to be given by Bharat Biotech to whoever it gives technology. That's one thing.
Okay.
Secondly, if you are just stealing the technology, that's what one of the chief ministers said, steal the technology and give it to somebody else. Do it, steal it and give it to somebody else. Tomorrow if something goes wrong, who's going to be responsible for the adverse events? Some deaths take place. These are the same guys who would say, get up and say, Modi की वैक्सीन में डेथ होता है. अरे ये क्या है? मजाक है क्या? कभी आप ये बोलोगे, कभी वो बोलोगे. It's not a child's play, by the way. So, who will be responsible for adverse events? That's important. Secondly, there are variant changes happening today. Every day you see variant changes. Now, who's going to work on these variant changes? Who's going to do animal trials, human trials, bring out the product, and repurpose the vaccines? Do you think the guys who have got the technology will do it? They will not do it. And their capacity and their vaccine will become redundant.
So, one second. What you're saying, Mr. Handa, is that you take Bharat Biotech's formula or technology or whatever, you may say its patent and give it to others. But ultimately, it will still be them responsible if something happens, or because nobody else will be willing to take the responsibility.
Absolutely.
And then in that scenario, why would they want to do that then?
Absolutely, but they do it. There won't be many takers for that also. I'm not saying. But at the end of the day, Dr. rightly said it, it's the safety of the people, the quality of the vaccine are very, very critical. Let's not rush and panic into the situation. I gave you the statistics. We will have enough of vaccine. In fact, we will have to ask people to come and vaccinate. That's the time will come in 3 to 6 weeks.
So, in other words, we just need to wait it out a little bit more and the problems will automatically be sorted because more vaccines will come to India. I'll come to that question in just a bit. But the issue of raw materials is also something that has been raised, for example, by Serum Institute. And after that, there was a lot of pressure on the US. Natasha, I'm coming to you with this because you're looking at these, supply chain issues very closely, globally. Now, the US finally relented for Covishield and they said they'll work to see what are the requirements for Covishield expansion in India. But there is a very critical question about Novavax, which is a jab that India was expected to rely on very deeply. In fact, at one time it was being predicted that 1 billion doses of Novavax will be used in India. But Novavax, fine, it hasn't yet been approved, but its vaccination production is also stalled because of these raw materials issues. So, sorting that out, sorting the supply chain out would be more key than adding more manufacturers, you feel?
Yes, I think everyone's really focusing on the wrong issue right now, and that is how you can add capacity, which is going to come in, 6, 8 months from now. And so what the real issue is that India, in theory, can produce 3.5 billion doses of vaccine this year, which is quite some quantity of vaccine. The question is whether it's going to be able to produce those doses that it has that capacity to produce. And one of the key issues here is whether you're going to get the raw materials and ingredients that you need to run your vaccine lines. Now, there have been concerns since, I would say, April aired, not just about the supply lines to India, but all around the world, and how these were very, very stretched. And we started hearing of problems in vaccine supply lines. And I was in the process of trying to find out where those problems were when Adar Poonawalla sent that tweet, which of course was on the 16th of April. And that sort of got me looking further into the right area, what was going on. And what we know now is that it's certainly the case that there's a Novavax line in India which is running at a fraction of its capacity right now because it can't get hold of raw materials, equipment, specialist biobags, filters, things like that.
So why is it that US is so, restrictive about this? I mean, what's holding it back? It opened up after much criticism because Adar Poonawalla went public with the complaint, and that happened for Covishield, let's say. But why are they not opening up fully when they believe that everyone has to be safe for US to be safe?
Well, this is a big mystery. So, first of all, just to explain what's been going on, when the US ramped up its vaccine production, it brought into play a particular piece of legislation that it uses during wars, actually, to take control of vaccine production. And it essentially means that if you're a vaccine making firm in America, you can get hold of what you need and you can make sure you prioritize any supplies that you need inside the country. And what that means for say, the Serum Institute is that if it was hoping to get, say, a biobag or a filter for its production line, it's at the very long end of a queue, at which the head of which are American firms. And that's causing a lot of problems. Now, the Americans say, look, the DPA isn't creating these shortages just exist. But what we're hearing is that this DPA is slowing down global trade of these things. It's causing hoarding, sort of compensatory actions by other suppliers, and it's really kind of gumming up the global supply. What's not clear, to get to your question, is why America hasn't started to release its use of the DPA, because it has plenty of vaccine, and that is something of a mystery. What I do know is there are discussions going on between the US and a group called CEPI, which is a coalition for epidemic preparedness, about maybe how the DPA could be used more smartly, cleverly, to make sure that supplies of equipment go to where they're needed globally. But this is going to be an issue that's critical for the world this year. It's going to be critical for India, is to make sure that you can get all the raw materials and equipment that you need.
So in other words, Dr. Chauhan, I want to come to you. Just adding more units at this stage, giving formulas to more manufacturers, even if they could, ramp it up to an extent which is viable for them. As you said, you need large production capacities, otherwise it's not viable. Even if the Bharat Biotech was supposed to do the hand-holding that it's expected to do if it shares its formula, none of that will really work unless there are raw materials available. Now, the crunch that is happening in India, the common public would be like, why couldn't all of this be done? At the end of the day, the public would say, I want my vaccine, why can't I get it? What would you say to them?
So there are actually three small points. One is, let's separate them from each other. One is sharing the formula and other companies making it. I think we discussed it. Even if all the supply chain is in order, it will take you 2 to 3 months to do so. So that question is separate. Right. So for the immediately, I think we should all just calm down. This simply cannot and will not happen.
Okay.
The second very important issue, which is just my previous panelist has very clearly established, that supply chain of everything. And whether, although it's true that India is the largest vaccine producer in the world, for most of the vaccine, the raw material we are dependent on supplies from elsewhere, whether America or European Union or wherever. I don't want to go into the details of it, but these things need to be in place in very large amounts. You can't have one small bulk coming and then for 2 weeks you don't have, so you need to have supply. So that's the other vertical. The third is, if you have made commitment as a contract manufacturer, and this is a very tricky issue and you're not easy to grasp right now. If a company has been funded and contracted to make X amount of vaccine and to give, in this case, as the previous speaker said, to CEPI, to Covax, and if you didn't do that, then I think then you will be under suspicion that you may not do it in future also, because you could stop that. This is a little bit complicated point. I don't want to dwell it too much.
Okay.
So we have to make sure that the companies which start making specially vaccines that come from foreign technologies, such as Johnson & Johnson with biological weapons, the Sputnik will come at Reddy's, Zydus will make its own. Genova is trying to work on the mRNA vaccine, and Panacea could make Covaxin. So these are three verticals that are going to run in absolute parallel. So if Covax invests large sums of money in SII, in serum, and serum then doesn't give the money, then I think these are future investments from outside or from the people who are going to give you technology comes into a little bit of a question. Everybody is aware of it, and we must not take our gaze off that.
Yeah, I think they're already facing some pressure on that as far as the Covaxin.
Let me just conclude this by saying that if everything works well, and it's a big if, by August or September or by end of the year, if Novavax is waiting to be said yes by the US, I don't know why it has happened because phase 3 trials are over. It is absolutely right. The Serum Institute has agreed to make 1 billion doses of this. And I'm going to look only at future. Right now, there's a lot of panic in the media where the politicians are saying one thing, the other. I think this narrative has to calm down a bit.
Okay.
We have to just face the shortage. It's not only Indian shortage.
Precisely.
It's world shortage. Many African countries or poor, low-income countries haven't got even 1% of their population. India is not doing as well as we could have done and should have done. But then there are countries they haven't even begun vaccination.
Yeah, and then there are also several Western countries or developed countries that are still behind India actually, both in absolute numbers and in percentages, and we have a challenge of our population in any case. Mr. Handa, so the sense that is emerging is that, there is a lot of pressure on Indian manufacturers. We just need to back off a little bit because it's not something that only India is dealing with. There are global supply chain issues. There are, of course, very intricate technology issues and safety concerns. Let's not forget. If something goes wrong, that somebody will have to be held responsible, and nobody wants to rush the process. So we just need to kind of back off and, allow the Indian manufacturers the space and time and the support to build up their capacities. And of course, government is looking into other units as well.
Absolutely. And if you look at the complexities, the Pfizer, it has 280 components in its vaccine, components. It imports it from 86 suppliers across 19 countries. Look at the complex of manufacturing these vaccines. Now, what government should do, it's very, very critical. Government has placed only advance orders. I think government should take positions of investment and risk capital in some of these vaccine manufacturers. I think that's where the government should come forward and say, yes, we will bet on these 3 or 4 manufacturers and we will invest it so that they can, accelerate their production capacities immediately. I think that is the game changer that government need to do.
Okay, they have said, of course, recently that they did make certain payments and certain benefits to 3,000 crores, for example, that Serum needed to expand its production. But perhaps more could have been done.
No, those are only advances for future orders. That's not an investment position.
So you're saying they should do a pure investment. They should do a pure investment.
They should do a pure investment.
Okay. Mr. Jain, I want to come to you. Will it be faster for India to then expedite some of the other approvals, of course, keeping safety, concerns in mind, the both that are being produced in India and bring in foreign jabs in India? Will that be faster in meeting this crunch? Because the timeline that is emerging from all of you is that, the vaccine production ramp up will take till July, August. What can we do before that? Can the situation improve before that? And is the only route to get more vaccine players into India?
So I will endorse what Keval has been saying and Dr. Virendra has been saying is let's have patience. We are in much better situation compared to most part of the world. We could have been better. There are 2 things as far as inputs are concerned. It is being taken at the highest level. Yesterday also we had some meetings. We are trying to get the inputs from US. We are connected with many of the US suppliers. And I will say there is a lot of proactive response to deal with the situation. So one is getting expedited the inputs which were constrained at some stage and ramping up the capacities of the current manufacturers. And as Keval rightly pointed it out, there is risk capital which is required. Bet on some of the suppliers which are there, which are already producing it. Point number 1. Point number 2 is there are new candidates and Zydus is already working on it. They will submit the data in the month of May. Hopefully we should get Zydus vaccine in the month of June, July. We should also get Sputnik which will also add to the contribution. So let's have patience. The things will move in the right direction. There are multiple challenges, but overall, one thing which is very, very clear, which Keval has been emphasizing, Dr. Virendra has been emphasizing, safety of vaccine is paramount. Technology is paramount. And we need to make sure that the product is right and we are able to take care of
We don't really want complications of the kind where a below safety standard product is produced and then we have whole other complications. That's really just not the realm we want to go into. Covaxin has already been a very safe vaccine. Covishield has had some issues, but in the larger context, all the vaccines have been very safe. Natasha, I'll give you a final word. Can we expect the global community to come together and really look at this and not just talk about this?
Well, I hope so. But I just wanted to go back to one other point that came up in the conversation quickly, and that was, if you want to make use of vaccine more efficiently, one thing you should think about is going to a longer dosing schedule. And in the UK, we've made quite effective use of a 12-week dosing schedule. So that means you give more first doses out more quickly, so you can reach people more quickly.
Sure.
Yes, you absolutely should import foreign vaccines as soon as you can if they have been approved by the WHO or other major international regulators. You should do all of those things if you can. There is a global scramble for vaccine, but if you can get foreign vaccine that's safe and effective, you should use it. And what was your last question?
About whether the world community will really stand true to its word. Very quickly, please.
I don't know. It needs pressure from all of us, and we need to call them to do this right now.
All right. For India, at least, the sense is that we need to tide over the crunch at least for another month's period, and then situations will ease out from all avenues, and that is why we all need to work together and look at all of these avenues. Our guests seem to indicate that it is already in the works. The government assures that it's already in the works. So let's just all come together and not panic at this stage. A big thanks to all of our guests for joining us and also for the viewers for tuning in. Thanks a lot.